Howdy folks, welcome back to another Out of Spec Renew video, and today you join me here with this 2018 Tesla Model 3. This is a dual motor long range variant, and we're just going to be doing a gearbox oil change here today. So just a little bit of regular maintenance. This is something that you probably want to consider doing on really any EV. Doesn't matter what EV you own, there is maintenance that you should be doing. Tesla doesn't specify a mileage interval for these vehicles. They used to, and then they eliminated the mileage interval. But yeah, any kind of moving parts are going to have wear and tear, and you're always going to get metal particulate buildup and stuff in the oil. So it's a good idea to go ahead and change it periodically. For Model 3 and Model Y, I would probably recommend an interval anywhere between 50 and 100,000 miles. It's not super critical that you do it real early. I would say 100,000 mile intervals are fine, but if you want to do it every 50,000, that works too. But yeah, so this whole procedure is going to apply both to Model 3 and Model Y. The process is basically exactly the same either way. And yeah, so we're going to get it onto the lift here and get started. All right, so we've got this car up here positioned on the lift, ready to go up. We don't have to do anything special in terms of disconnecting the 12-volt battery or doing anything like that for this job. So we're just gonna go ahead and bring this thing up. We're gonna pull both skid plates off, and then we'll go ahead and drain the fluids. Alrighty, so we'll go ahead and start up here at the front. As you can see, our skid plate on here is a little bit messed up. The customer actually sourced a new one, but they're going to go ahead and have us swap on here. These old style kind of pressed fabric ones are pretty crappy. So they got a metal one to replace it with, which will kind of help protect the battery a little bit better. So we'll go ahead and get that thing on when we're going to put everything back. But for now, we've got that end undone. Got a couple fasteners up here. And just one left right there. Bingo. Alrighty. I'll probably bring you guys around to this side so I can show you how we're actually going to drain the fluid. And then of course we'll go through the whole refilling process as well. Okay, so to drain the oil, there is no actual drain plug on this drive unit. So to drain the fluid, we're actually just going to pull the pump out, which hopefully doesn't prove to be too difficult. Let me grab a little pick here to unplug it. And I also need a ratchet. So we've got this little locking tab on the top here we've got to pull back on. If I can get enough of a grab on it. There we go. So it just pulls back, then we push on it a little bit, and it unplugs just like so. We can just tuck that connector back here out of the way so that hopefully it doesn't get drenched in oil. At least that's the theory. There we go. Just tuck it right into that hole. And then we've got two EP Torx. I believe this is a 10. Yeah, EP Torx 10. So we've just got two of those fasteners in here that hold this in. And of course I've got a catch container here underneath to catch the oil when it drains out. Now, the front drive unit here, the oil pump cannot be completely removed. So we'll just have to slide it out far enough for the oil to drain out. And I actually just recently saw a case where somebody tried to do this and the whole plastic casing of the pump came off, but the pump stayed stuck inside, which obviously is less than ideal. If that were to happen, I guess you'd have to drop the front end of the drive unit down, which maybe could be done without dropping the whole subframe. I guess that you could maybe just remove this bolt and kind of swing the drive unit down out of the way. Don't know if that's really a viable solution or not, but at least that's a theoretical way to do it. All right, I've got a couple different tools here that we can try and use to sort of get this separated. I've got just a flathead screwdriver and a clip tool. We want to kind of try to gently pry this apart without putting a big load on it, because we don't want it to snap loose from its housing. So I'm just going to try and gently work it off of there. There we go. So that just pulls out like so. And like I said, we can't remove the whole pump, so we just kind of have to pull it out like that. And it's probably going to drain fairly slowly, but what will probably help would be if I remove the fill plug, which will probably allow the fluid to flow out a bit faster. So let me do that. That's just going to be an 8mm Allen key. If I can find one here real quick. Here's my 8mm Allen. This one's slightly modified to have a shortened stub on it to actually be able to fit on different car, actually. Front drive unit on Model X has very little clearance to be able to get the fill plug, or rather the drain plug out. So I have a special short one of these. Not necessary for this application though. All right, so that's our fill plug out, just a little brass fill plug. Doesn't seem like it made much of a difference for our draining speed here, but maybe it'll do something. All right, just continue to let that drain. And now we can go ahead and pull the filter off too. Now I would say replacing the filter is probably not strictly necessary. It's unlikely that this thing's ever going to get clogged with enough debris to cause a problem. If that did become an issue, you'd have much bigger problems to worry about. But we're in here, we might as well replace it. So that's going to be that. That's a little too tight for me to get off by hand, so let me get a tool. Somewhere here I've got a strap wrench, or at least I thought I did. You know what I do have is a chain wrench. Let's see, I want to go this way. This is absolutely going to destroy this filter. Oh, and of course now the pump is in the way. We'll just slide that back temporarily. Like I said, this is going to absolutely destroy the filter housing, but we don't care because it's getting replaced anyways. There we go. I can slide our pump back out, and we can remove the filter. That's probably going to help a little bit with the draining too. All right, so we'll go ahead and trash the filter, and I'm just going to let this continue to slowly drain until it basically stops, and then we'll go ahead and refill it and add our new filter. Okay, I think we've sufficiently drained. We're down to just a couple drips. I'm going to go ahead and put the new filter on. I have gone ahead and just wet the O-ring with a little bit of fresh fluid. That way it makes a good seal. And this does not have to be crazy super duper tight, just like an oil filter on any other car. We just want to make sure it's on there nice and snug. So I'm just going to basically go about as tight as I can go by hand. That right there should be good. And now we can go ahead and just slide the pump back into position. So that should just slide in nice and smooth, like so. Get our fasteners back into it. All right, we're good there. So we don't want to go too crazy with assembly here just yet, because of course we need to fill our gearbox. And this is where things can get just a touch tricky compared to just a super basic fluid change on a lot of other cars. And that is that in order to put in all of the fluid that we need to fill the drive unit, we're actually going to have to manually run the oil pump. So I'm going to go ahead and get some of my other stuff out of the way here. And then I'm going to go ahead and get our fluid ready to go, and then we should be able to start filling. Okay, so it's time to get prepped to actually fill the gearbox. So our fill plug is not a level plug in the traditional sense. So we want to make sure we put in the correct amount of fluid. So I've actually just got this little pressurized fluid pump, whatever the heck you want to call it. It's specifically kind of for doing this to fill a gearbox or whatever with whatever fluid you're looking to use. I've just got a measuring container. This is what I use all the time just for measuring fluid levels. It's not super, doesn't have all of the different measurement levels on it. This is not an exact science though, in terms of, getting it down to the milliliter for how much fluid you want in there. But the fluid capacity for this thing is 1.3 liters or 1,300 milliliters. So we want to go, basically just a little over halfway between 1 liter and 1.5 liters. We'll probably even give it just a little bit extra because this pump here doesn't always get all of the fluid out into the container. And then our fluid here is EDF2. There's different brands. Pentacin just happens to be what my local auto parts store carries in stock. Officially, the new fluid spec for these cars is KAF1, but I have not been able to see any kind of sourcing to be able to actually get a hold of EDF1, because Tesla doesn't sell it over the counter. So they say, go source it from a third party. The problem is that there's no other third parties that I've been able to find that you can get it from other than a distributor in the UK. So there's no point trying to order oil from the UK when we can just use the original spec fluid anyways for this car. This is what the car originally came with. And we're just going to take our measured out fluid and dump it into the container here. And then we should be good to go to start refilling. Make sure our cap is on here nice and tight. And the way that this thing works is once all that's on there, it just has this little pump. So we can just pump it up to pressurize this container. You can see we've got a little gauge here, and it just has a little valve, which apparently I had open. Just has a little valve. And all we got to do is just pump this up. You can see the pressure gauge rises. So I'm just going to get this thing pumped up to pressure, and then we can go ahead and start filling the gearbox. Okay, so we're ready to start filling our gearbox. I actually just put a different end on the hose here. This just kind of has a little hook on it. We can just let it sit there. And what we're going to do is we're going to partially fill the gearbox. And then once we get about half of the fluid in, I'm going to shut off the flow. We're going to run the pump while we put the rest of the fluid in. And that's going to ensure that we get all the fluid in because it's got to get into the filter and through all of the windings in the motor and everything. There's a bunch of different passages in there. And we want to make sure we can actually get the full 1.3 liters in there. If we don't run the pump while we're doing the fill, we might not actually be able to get the proper amount of fluid in. So that's the reasoning for that. So I'm just going to turn this little valve on, and we should have fluid flowing now, which I don't know if you guys can see the gauge on this thing, but it's going to be decreasing in pressure a bit as it starts putting fluid in there. In fact, if I go ahead and pull this guy out, we can see that it is indeed flowing fluid. And I can try and pump this up to give it a little bit more pressure. It's not the fastest, but it does get the job done to get all the fluid in there. And I'd say we're getting to a point where we're close to halfway down. So I'm going to go ahead and get my pump harness ready here. All right, so what I've got right here is just a little pigtail harness. It's the same connector that the pump uses from the factory. So we're just going to plug that guy in right there, like so. And then on the other end, I just have a couple spade terminals, and I've just got one of my Milwaukee M12 batteries, so 12 volt power supply essentially. We're going to run the pump. And that's going to ensure that we can get all the fluid in. And it looks like we got there just in time because we're just starting to run out of fluid there. And it looks like we might have just been starting to drip just a tiny bit from the filter there. I probably should have shut off the fluid flow. But I think we're just about good at this point. I am going to, apparently my wires need to be a little bit longer. It's just hanging there. I'm going to shut off the fluid flow. I'm going to repressurize my container here a little bit, just to ensure that we got all of the fluid out. And I think that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the pump. So we're good there. We can go ahead and plug the factory harness back in. We can pull out our little filler neck there. And then all that's left to do is just a little bit of cleanup. So I'm going to grab just a touch of some brake clean just to kind of degrease things here. I don't need to go too crazy. Just so we don't have any drips anywhere. And there we go. So that's the front drive unit done. We can go ahead and move on to the back now, which is basically the same process, but we'll actually be able to pull the pump out a little bit easier. And of course, I'm sure everybody's going to say, what about the fill plug? Well, there it goes. Okay, so on the rear here, as you can see, it's largely the same. I've already taken off the bottom cover and we've got that undone. I also already took out the fasteners for the pump and unplugged it. And now we just have to get it pried loose. So this one, of course, we can fully remove from the gearbox, which will make it a little bit quicker to actually drain the fluid out. So that's kind of a nice perk on the rear one. It's just a little bit simpler to do. Like I said, we want to gently pry this out, not put real sudden force on it because we don't want to pull the cap off of the pump and damage it. It should just slide out of there ever so nicely, just like so. And there you go. So the pump is out. I'm going to go ahead and just set it off to the side here and let it kind of drip. I made a little bit of a mess, but not too badly. And I can go ahead and do the same with the filter as we did on the other one. We use the chain wrench on it. Probably overkill, but I can't find my other strap wrench, so this one will do the trick. Alrighty, I'll let that drain and I'll get the fluids prepped to do the rear. Okay, all the fluid is drained. I already got the pump reattached. We'll put the new filter on. I think it's kind of funny that when you buy new filters from Tesla, they don't come with the Tesla logo like the original one did. I guess it's just cheaper to make them that way. The current, like the 4DU, the newest generation drive unit, does not actually have an externally serviceable oil filter, which is kind of funny. All right, so all that's left now is we just got to take our fill plug out, and then we can go ahead and start filling this thing with fluid. So what other notes do I have to add on the rear? So the rear uses more fluid. It's got higher fluid capacity, which makes sense because it is the primary driver of the vehicle. So it's going to have more thermal loading and stuff on it. So we want a bit more cooling capacity for it, which of course for these motors, they are oil cooled. So the oil for the gearbox also serves as the cooling medium for the stator windings, and of course, you know, the gears and the bearings themselves too. Dang, this fill plug is not wanting to come out super easily. Oh, there we go. Broken loose. Yeah, that O-ring just got a little bit stuck to the case. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get our filler in there. My tank is already pressurized, so I am going to go ahead and start the flow. So that is going. I'll let it flow here for a couple seconds, and I'll go ahead and get our pump connected and ready. And then when I think we're at a point that we're good to go, I'll go ahead and connect the power lead on the pump. We don't want to run the pump dry, so we do want to make sure that we get some amount of fluid in there before we start running it. Because, yeah, obviously running it dry would be less than ideal. And our pressure is decreasing pretty precipitously here. I might have to go ahead and stop and repressurize our container. Yeah, that might be good enough. Okay, I'll get my leads reconnected since the battery fell off. Okay, that's negative, and then our positive will connect last. Start the flow. And once we get down to about halfway, I'll connect the pump up. But yeah, so like I was saying, higher fluid capacity for the rear drive unit here. It's 2.1 liters for the original style. The newer 4DU drive units, which are only going to be in the cars built here in the last year or two, basically. Well, maybe a little bit more than that, but basically only the most recent cars with 4DU, those use 2.3 liters. So they have an extra 200 milliliters of capacity. We'll go ahead and start running our pump here. Okay, our fluids are full. We're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and just plug this back in. And then I'm just going to give this just a little spritz of brake clean. Make sure we have no drips of oil coming down anywhere. Sweet. Alrighty, I think we're good there. I might go ahead and just write the date and the mileage. Good stuff. Well, that's pretty much it here. All I've got to do is get the bottom covers back on, and this thing's good to go. Well, folks, that's it for this one. I got everything all buttoned up underneath. Not much point in showing that on camera because it's just the reverse procedure of removing it all. It's just a bunch of M6 fasteners. But yeah, relatively straightforward job, but maybe not the easiest thing to DIY. You do have to be able to run those oil pumps. You don't necessarily have to have the special connector to plug into it. But if you can make one of those, it makes it a lot easier. You can connect to them just with a real small female spade terminal too. You just have to make sure to get the pin out right. Yeah, so anyway, positive and negative are the two outermost pins. There's a center pin that normally does the speed control for these things. But yeah, anyways, that's pretty much it. And yeah, hopefully you guys find this useful. And as always, thanks for watching.